Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Nap Bros podcast. As you can see, it is just me today, and I am going to be focusing on trying to look at the camera versus trying to look at the video that is on my computer screen. That being said, as you can see, Andrew is not here with me. I am currently in my bedroom, and I am still in my workout uniform because I have yet to take a shower today, and I don't care. I'm going to do what I want to do. I will take a shower. My wife and I have plans for later this evening, and so I do need to take a shower. That way I can smell fresh and go meet people. But today is another story time. Yay! So welcome back in. I decided that since this is episode 33, I would give you a story from my 33rd year, which was just 2 years ago. And just in case you don't remember, 2 years ago was when COVID decided to hit the world and have fun with it. And so I do have a particular story. It's not necessarily a great story, not really a goofy or funny story, just a story that ended up happening to my wife and I, actually. And so before I get into it, I would love for you guys to subscribe. Click the bell, that way you're notified whenever we post. And if you're listening on your podcasting app, just subscribe and it'll notify you. Hopefully it'll download automatically. And leave a comment below about what you think about the story when we get to the end. And there will definitely be a question about stuff that happened to you during COVID. So without any further ado, let's get into the story. COVID has been raging for 6 months now, and I'm literally going back 2 years ago to July of 2020. And COVID's been raging for 7-8 months now in China, where I presently live and was living at the time. And thankfully, my wife and I, in May of 2020, we're celebrating our year anniversary. So we had already been together for a year. And luckily we were married. Like, we didn't have any complications with marriages. And I know that was going on, definitely. But in July of 2020, I was leaving my school. I was breaking a contract with the university that I was working with. And I'm about to throw this university. I'm not throwing the whole university under the bus. I'm just throwing my particular department, the English department, under the bus. Not going to give names, but just going to let you know. I'll tell you the name of the university. The university was Zhejiang University City College. It is in Hangzhou, China. And we'll see how this pans out as far as anybody reaching out and maybe making contact with him, but I do not care. It was July, and I was in the midst of breaking the contract with him because I had signed on for another year prior to the COVID outbreak. I had signed up to teach for a whole year, but some stuff happened. Some crap literally happened. So I'm going to take you back to February of 2020. My wife and I had just gotten back from, or I guess it was it was late January, early February of 2020. My wife and I had just gotten back from Hubei, which, just in case you all don't know, Hubei is where Wuhan is located. It's a province or state, if you want to view it that way, but it's a province that Wuhan is located in. Now, we weren't in Wuhan. We weren't that terribly close to Wuhan. We're about 200 kilometers. In miles, I have no idea what that is. Less than 100 miles, maybe 100 miles. I don't know. I have no idea. But that being said, we were close. We had left Hubei because I had been paying attention to what was going on and realized that the numbers were increasing dramatically. So, before we had left, Wuhan actually ended up getting locked down. And so I was preparing myself knowing that at some point in time, Hubei will probably be locked down. If they can lock down Wuhan, they can definitely lock down Hubei. So I was like, I think we need to get out before that happens. We leave in the cover of the night. This is probably January 24th of 2020, if I remember correctly. We leave in the cover of night, and we are making our way back to Hangzhou. And in a moment of providence and a moment of blessing, come to find out, we left 2 hours before they actually ended up locking down the province. So that leads into the story. So we arrived back in Hangzhou, and we see one of my colleagues, and he was asking us where we had come from. And I had half a mind to lie to him. And looking back on it probably would have been, and I'm not a proponent of lying, but it probably would have been better in this particular instance to lie. Nevertheless, we didn't. So what ended up happening is we told him that we had come back from Hubei, and he informed the university, and the university then told us that we needed to quarantine. Now, I've never quarantined in my life. No idea about quarantine. Don't have any clues at this point what the heck quarantine is. And obviously, most of the world had no idea what it was either. So for me, quarantine meant stay away from people. I was like, that's easy to do. I love people, but I can stay away from them to keep them safe. That's fine. No problem. Not an issue. So the next day, after they inform us that we need to quarantine, the next day, we take our dog out for a walk. We have a small dog. He needs to go out. He needs to do his poop pee thing. He needs to do his little exercise thing. So we're going to take him out for a walk. And as we leave, there is this woman in our building. My building was on the university campus. So this woman had some connection to the university, whether she was a parent of a teacher or something like that. This woman starts to yell at us. Now, she's yelling at us in Chinese, so I have no earthly clue what she's saying and am ignoring every bit of it. But apparently it was something that in Chinese is actually a very horrible thing to say. Could be construed as the N word towards black people, could be considered the C word towards Asians. It could be considered the S word towards Hispanics, something along those lines. At least in Chinese, like if you translate it into English, it's not going to mean as much. But in Chinese, the stuff that she was saying was incredibly offensive, and so I got in contact with the school about this. Now, they did tell us, hey, you're not allowed to leave, and that's probably the reason why she was doing it. I was like, that's fine, but it doesn't absolve her of her rudeness. And so we would like you to find out who it is. There's only a limited number of people on this campus, so it should be relatively easy for this school to figure out who it is. But they didn't. They toyed with us. They played us along, they pulled us along, and they kept saying, oh, we're trying to find out who it was. We're trying to see who could have possibly said those things, because, yeah, it's really bad. But they were saying the right things, but not actually doing anything. Does that remind you of anybody? Anyway, besides that, there was no actual action done. Now, this could be absolved. We're cool, no problem. Like, okay, fine, we will take... We'll just accept that the school is not really like gonna go and delve into finding out who is saying like these hateful things. And again, it's words, no problem. They didn't throw anything. They weren't trying to beat us up. They weren't doing any. There was no violence. So words, sticks and stones break bones. Words don't hurt. Cool, good to go. So what we then did is come to find out we were going to be locked down for 14 days. Well, we can't have a dog inside of our apartment for 14 days. He needs to go and use the bathroom. He's got to have, some walking outside time. So thankfully we got in touch with my father-in-law, and we were able to give the dog to him. And so he ended up taking it, took care of it for 14 days. My wife and I ended up chilling inside the house for 14 days. I will say this university was really great in the beginning. They were bringing us food. They were treating us well. We weren't left wanting anything. We were just chilling inside of our apartment and watching a lot of anime. Actually, just One Piece, really. We're watching a ton of One Piece. That's how I ended up catching up on One Piece. But I digress. The 2 days after we got out of quarantine, we were trying to figure out a way to get our dog back to us. And this is at the early point in COVID when everybody thought that animals were transmitting, could possibly transmit COVID to everybody else. And especially here in China, that was one misinformation, if you could call it such a thing, one idea that was out there for people. And so the school was like, no, you cannot do this. And it's like, oh, okay, well, this is ridiculous. Like there's nothing wrong with that. So this is where, according to the school, I believe this is where they were justified in their actions that came later on. But we decided to sneak our dog back into our apartment because it had been 14 days without our dog. We wanted him, and we were like, well, we can just walk him late at night and early in the morning. Things will be just fine. And so we did. We walked him late at night that evening. We walked him early in the morning, the next morning. And then the next evening, we walked him late at night again. And then the next morning, we are getting prepared to walk him again. And put on his leash, open up the door. I go to step outside, and I'm stepping outside in my socks because my shoes, generally you leave your shoes outside and you don't bring your shoes inside unless you have a really dirty house. My wife is a wonderful cleaner, and so we don't have a dirty house. And so left the shoes outside. I go to step outside, and I feel something wet on my foot. And I'm like, okay, did it rain? No, it didn't rain. Was it an umbrella? Did something spill? Did somebody spill something? Was there trash? Like what is wet on my foot? It's dark, mind you. Again, it's early in the morning, and so it's pretty dark out. And so we have a light outside. So we go to flick on the light, and my wife is turning on her cell phone light. Somebody had decided to put dog crap on our doormat. And a few pieces of it. So what I didn't really step full on into it, but my foot had just kind of grazed it. And I could feel that it was wet to the touch. And so we are beside ourselves. We're like, who in the world is going to put dog crap? Like, who's going to take that step to put dog crap on our doorstep? And the biggest thing is like just especially thinking about all Chinese people, because I want to say this really quick. Out of all the Chinese people I've met in my life, there have probably been, and there's been probably hundreds of thousands of Chinese people that I've met in my life, especially in my time here. Out of hundreds of thousands of Chinese people, there have probably been literally three, that I would say were horrible human beings. Maybe four, maybe like a handful. We'll just say a handful, like 5. Okay. Now I'm thinking of other stories that I remember, but 5. Most Chinese people, especially in relationship to a foreigner, are very respectful, very loving, actually super excited, especially if they've never seen a foreigner. They're like, oh my goodness, it's a foreigner. And like incredibly welcoming, incredibly sweet. And so to sit there and be thinking like, who in the world would have the audacity? Because I had known that my wife and I was the only foreigner there in this building. The rest of them had gone back to either their hometowns or had gone back to or their home countries or gone on trips and stuff like that. So my wife and I were pretty much the only ones there, and there would be other Chinese people in there. And this harkened back to this woman who had been yelling insults to my wife. Now, there's a lot of stipulations. There's a lot of assumptions that can be made. And I don't want to make any assumptions as to who it was. Who could have possibly who could have put poop on the doormat. But what I will speculate on and what I will tell you about is the university's response to that incident. So in the first instance where we're getting yelled at and having horrible things said to my wife in Chinese, yeah, okay, the school just kind of like was pulling our legs and saying, "Oh, we're looking, we're trying to find out." Never really did anything. But now we have dog crap. Someone has actually taken action and done something to not just disgrace us, but to vandalize our doormat. Okay? Because it was on the doormat. And my sock, because I happened to step on it. But this university, Zhejiang University City College, just to remind you, and again, the English department, not even really. No. I'll even say you know what? No, it was the university because the security team was also responsible as well. Because when we told them that this had happened, my boss in the English department had told me, had said, well, could it possibly be that you have your dog? Because I assumed that they had found out that I had the dog because, there are cameras everywhere. And so she was like, could it possibly be that it was your dog that ended up doing it? I'm like, number one, I know when my dog takes a crap. And I know what it smells like. Okay? And I also know the size and consistency of his poop. Mostly the size. Because he's got a small butthole. He's a small dog. This one was a pretty decent size. My dog's poop is normally about this big. We'll say the size of like a dime, maybe a penny, nickel. We'll say a nickel. We'll throw a nickel. This was quarter size poop. Quarter size to 50-cent piece poop. So don't be trying to tell me that it was my dog that did it, especially when my dog is in my sight the whole time. But the school, the security team, the department, my English department, the people who are responsible for finding out who put this on there, failed miserably. Probably actually didn't fail, but actually probably chose not to actually do any examination of it. And the problem is, and I'll tell you the whole story. Yes, we illegally had our dog because I want all this out there just in case in the future somebody comes back from ZUCC and decides to say, oh, this is not true. Let's go with this. I will tell you everything. Number one, we sent out and we said, hey, somebody put poop on our doorstep. They came back in and they said, okay, we'll check the cameras. Okay. And apparently the cameras, they couldn't find any proof of anybody putting anything there. So what I asked is I said, hey, is it okay if you test the dog poop to try and figure out whose dog it was or try and figure out some information about it? Because again, I don't know anything about tests and stuff like that. And then my boss from the Department of English came to me and said, are you sure you want us to call the police? Because if we call the police, they're going to come. And then there's probably going to be a problem, especially if you happen to have a dog inside of your apartment. And so in order for me, because at the point I was like, I might get into some serious trouble for having the dog because in essence, I'm breaking the rules. Like they said that I wasn't supposed to have a dog there. And so in order to not get in trouble, I told them don't bring the police, just have the security team find it out. Needless to say, they didn't. They didn't find any information out. They didn't want to. They didn't try to. This is the one time, and I will lambast this university until the day I die. Zhejiang University City College is garbage because they don't care about people. They only care about money. They only care about face. They did not give a crap about us. And I hate them for that. Because and I even had a conversation with the president of the university. And he seemed like a nice guy. But I will say, the English department, the leaders in the English department, not the whole English department, the leaders in the English department are garbage. The security there are garbage because they don't care about the people that are there. They don't care to find out. Me having my dog in the apartment versus somebody putting poop on my doorstep, you're out of your mind. Like, how is that even remotely close to the same thing? That being said, at that point, so this is in February of 2020, from that point on, everybody in the English department, and this is the reason why I attacked the English department so much, every single one of my bosses in the English department all of a sudden had nothing to do with me. Nothing at all. If I had a question, if I had a problem, It was always like, go ask your wife, get your wife to translate, do this, and they would send me stuff. They used to send me stuff in English. Now they would send me stuff in Chinese, send me messages in Chinese. And I'm like, hey, I can't read this. And they were like, oh, just get your wife to translate. So needless to say, I was done with that place. That place is probably one of the worst places I've ever worked, simply because of their reaction to stuff that had happened during COVID. To begin with, they started out great, and then after our quarantine, things were just horrible afterwards. So, my suggestion to Zhejiang University City College, fix yourself. Fix yourself. You got some messed up priorities. That's it. I've got plenty of stories from COVID-19, that whole fiasco that happened in the world, but this is the one that probably hits home the most for me. I appreciate you guys being here. Next week, I hope to have Andrew back, and we're probably going to end up talking some Roe v. Wade stuff. So tune in for that. As always, guys, thank you so much for being here. If you are watching on YouTube, again, click the subscribe, click the bell, hit the like button if you like the story. Leave me a comment in the section below. That way I know what's one of the worst stories. What's one of the worst stories that happened to you in 2020? I'm curious to hear your story. If you're listening on YouTube, if you're listening on your podcast app, click the subscribe, leave us a review down below. If you're watching on YouTube, there are going to be some videos up on this side or up on this side. Other stories. I have one other story, and so another story time type thing. I'm Nick, and as always, thank you for listening. And you have an open invitation to our conversation. Bye-bye.